Let's talk about DNS. DNS is the domain name system. It's an entire worldwide hierarchical system of servers that take care of the translation from domain names to IP addresses or host names to IP addresses. Now, if we slim that down and think about your local area network, you're going to have a computer and it might use an IP address such as 192.168.1.100. And this guy's going to have an IP address, a subnet mask, a gateway address, but also a DNS server address that it points to. And so you either need to have a DNS server on your network or out on the internet. And that's more likely. The DNS server will be on the internet. And because of that, it'll usually be on a different IP network number. So the DNS server might be something like, who knows, it could be anything, 151.168.32.1. And there might be multiple DNS servers. There might be the same IP with .2. And you need to put in both of those DNS servers into your client IP settings. Wherever the DNS server is, whether it's internal on the LAN and hosted by your company or organization, or if it's outside on the internet, it's going to use port 53 as the open port to accept requests to translate from IP address to domain name. So let's say, and vice versa, let's say the computer wants to go to google.com or something like that. That name needs to be converted to IP address for the computers to actually talk to each other and make sense. So the DNS server is going to do that for us. And the client computer needs to connect to that DNS server on port 53. And we're going to show a little more of that in Windows and show the port that is used by a server. And we'll get into that in just a little bit. So we've talked a little bit about DNS. Now let's show some of DNS and how it works within Windows. We'll start in the GUI and we'll go to the control panel and go back to the Network and Sharing Center. And then from there, we're going to go to Change Adapter Settings. And we'll go to our Ethernet adapter. That's our wired network connection with the static IP configuration. We'll right-click that and go to Properties. And that brings up the Ethernet Properties IP sheet. Now, if we go down to TCP/IP version 4 and go to Properties for that, that brings up the IP version 4 sheet. And if we look down here, we see the preferred DNS server. Well, that's going to be the computer, or in this case, the 4-port Soho router that will act as our DNS server and will do all the name resolutions that we require. So that's going to be 10.254.254.1, and that's the same as our default gateway, 10.254.254.1. Same IP address. It's the same device. So that's going to do all the resolutions from host name and domain name over to IP address, allowing the computers to really communicate with each other, because that's how they ultimately do communicate, is by IP. So if we go into the command line, we can see this also. And we can just do a quick ipconfigs/all. And we'll see that information here. This is the same IP setup. It's the same network adapter. And here's the DNS server. So you can look at that in both ways. You can find that DNS server information from the IP properties sheet or by doing an ipconfig/all in the command line. So let's show DNS in action. We'll do a quick ping command in the command prompt. And I'll do a ping space davidlprowse.com. And you can see here what happens. It pings the domain name, davidlprowse.com. That's my website. And then it shows you the corresponding IP address, which is a public IP address, a internet-facing IP address, because it's on my web server, 216.97.236.245. How does it know this? A DNS server finds out this information for us. And it all starts with your DNS device at your 4-port router or your DNS server at your company, or it starts at the DNS server at your ISP. And that's really where the real DNS is going to start. That server may know already that davidlprowse.com is 216.97.236.245. It has a table of information with two columns, the host names and the IP addresses. But it could be that this server is located in another country or another area of your particular country. And if that's the case, then the DNS server might not know what the IP address is that corresponds to davidlprowse.com. At that point, it sends a request to the next level of DNS server. Remember, we said it's a hierarchical system, and it goes up and up and up like a pyramid to the master DNS server. So that request will keep going up until a server says, yes, I either know that resolution, I know that domain name to IP address, or I know another server that knows it, or I know where that server is located, and I'll send it to that DNS server. So this is just an example of a quick name resolution. You got to remember, our computer is not going to communicate with the davidlprowse.com website by name. It does it by IP address, and then it sends lots of bits of information, zeros and ones, back and forth in rapid fashion. So that's a little bit about DNS, the domain name system. Take a look on your system, look in the IP properties, look in the ipconfig/all, and do a couple tests. Do a ping, and you can see a little bit about how DNS works. And in future sub-lessons and lessons, we'll talk about other commands that you can use to show a little bit more with DNS, such as NSLOOKUP and tracert and things like that. But that's about it for this sub-lesson, and thanks for watching.